things that, that contributed to that we need to do better. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the downward trend in calls for service is a good thing, because it means that we got a handle on some things that are taking place. And for our reference, as we move forward here, this is how we are set up to do business currently. This is our zone structure. It's broken down into 4 quadrants. A1 and 2 would essentially be your heights. B1 and 2 would be your downtown East End area. All of the C's are the West End. And D1 and 2 would be your South Side, lower West End, if you will. So when we start looking at where the calls are, where we went up, where we went down, this is the reference for that. So as you can see on the left column there, when we break these specific calls down by zone, what you'll see, and if you go back to our 2020 report, that every category, A through D, with the exception of D1, went down. Various percentages. So 4% for A1, I'm going to run it from the top down. 13 for A2, 13 for B1, 8 for B2, 5 for C1, 7 for C2, 2 for C3, an increase 2% in D1 and a decrease 6%. At the end of the day, when we do the math on that for the 89,000, that comes to a 6% decrease in total calls for service. So that's good. And it's good if we get the reduction for the right reason. And one thing that really jumps out when you look at B1 and 2 specifically, I think you know that part of our strategy in the safety levy was to improve our downtown safety, and a lot of that had to do with transient type behavior. So our effort to augment our presence and our enforcement, combined with community action, really resulted in something that you see here. Many of you know that we spent a significant amount of time at the Lazy KT Motel. It generated hundreds of calls, little and big, for the department. So combined with community action, basically a group of business people bought that facility and closed it, coupled with our enforcement efforts, you can see from that bottom slide that we significantly cut back the number of visits we had to that location, thereby freeing up our resources to do other stuff. This is a great example of the public-private partnership on addressing problems. And there's other problem properties that we are working with our partners as we do that. Let's see here, so bear with me as I... So when we look at, so this breaks down the number of calls or the types of calls that we have been on. And as you can see, as usual, the great majority of the calls that we go on are what we call suspicious. And this is exactly what we want the community doing. We want people calling when things don't look right, when something's out of place. The feds have the see something, say something tag, and it's very applicable. So what this really means is that a great majority of our citizens and our officers as well are paying attention to things that just don't look right. Now, some of these, a great majority of them, aren't anything. But if we don't know about it, we can't check it out. And so you see that we have, although it's down a little bit, we do have a significant number. It's always the number one generator of calls for us year in and year out, that particular category. Second of all, moving down as far as incidents, traffic stops. And again, remember, we track what our officers do to make sure that they're getting credit for proactive policing. In this particular case, 8,800 down from 2020. Okay, now there's some correlations here as we move down. When you look at traffic complaint investigations, those are down. We have accidents are up, and we have hit and runs that are up. So the correlation there, what I think we really need to do a better job of is our traffic enforcement. There's an absolute direct correlation to our enforcement efforts to accidents, injury accidents, DUIs. And as we go through this, you will see that where our enforcement is down from past years, that the corresponding outcome is inverse to that. And this is something, again, that we identified as we move forward with our policing plan, was to improve traffic safety. And we have put more people on our traffic unit. We have engaged in focused policing. We put a supervisor. But this is one unit, and they do a great job. But it is also the responsibility of everybody else to enforce traffic. It's part of the job description. All right, and so this is something that, you know, we need to do better on this thing. And it really popped out here, and so those are one of the things that we will work on. The alarms, I think some of you are aware that the council recently passed an alarm ordinance, a false alarm ordinance that is in full swing right now. We send people warning letters. Potentially, if they get 3 false alarms, they can be fined. The police department has received 2. I think the fire department thinks it's funny, but we need to. City Hall's got an alarm issue because of so many people coming and going. We got to get a handle on our own house before we start getting other people. However, the point is that there are 4,000 calls, 4,000 alarm calls, and I will venture to say that 99% of them were false. We just don't get the ones that you see on TV where there's actually something going on. People don't set it right, the dog's out, they forget the door, they trip it themselves, whatever the case may be. And so the attempt by the city is not to generate revenue from any alarm ordinance, it's to get people to maintain their system. So we're not wasting resources on false alarms. That's what the point there. So I'm hoping to report next year that number goes down. That number goes down. And so we'll be monitoring that closely. Obviously, we talked about the traffic. The other thing of concern, and it goes heavily to mental health and our co-occurring addiction issues, would be those suicide attempts. They continue to go up. We go on a lot of those. Threats, attempts, and then people that unfortunately have actually committed suicide. That is a significant number that we go on. And again, as everybody knows, this is it's a problem, but it's also a permanent solution to a temporary situation that we can get help for. And so again, we're working with our social partners, our mental health partners, to help get a handle on some of that. The vehicle theft, of course, has been a scourge for us for a long time. I'll talk a little bit more about it in later slides, but we continue to creep up. There's a myriad of reasons for that. The availability of the cars, people have keys in them. They're getting really good at breaking in and stealing them. They generally take them to the next crime scene and dump them. And then, of course, we have issues with the criminal justice system. And I will tell you that 98% of the vehicles that are reported stolen, we recovered. 98% last year. Now, not all of them probably in pristine shape, but we found them. Partner family member assault, this is a huge problem, even as it spans into the felony side of things. I mean, we've got stressors going on. COVID was an anomaly year, but we saw a significant increase in PFMA, which, you're basically talking about assaulting your spouse, your significant other. Very difficult to prevent unless you're standing right there. But we're looking at working on the back end with our city attorney and others to make it a little bit harder for them to be repeat offenders. The big thing that jumps out would be these weapons calls that we go on. Now understand that weapons calls are anything from a report of a shot fired that we may or may not have found anything, or actual evidence that a shot was fired. Most of these didn't hit anything, but we do have a significant increase in the weapons, and it's not all firearms, but that jump from 806 to 994 represents 23% increase. And we have spoken before that there is a propensity, especially with the youth in the community, to quickly go to weapons. They have access to them from whatever, and it's very, very quick to solve problems that way. And so again, situations that we are aware of and need to work on. On the weapon situation here, just our specialized units alone, not counting patrol, just specialized units, we recovered 364 weapons. Just the specialized, not patrol, whatever they got into. So that's a lot of weapons. And again, they're not all firearms. There's other stuff that's involved in that, but firearms comes to the forefront. And so again, there is a fair amount of firearms and weapons in the community and being used by people for various crimes on that. Let's see here. So our homicides goes to our violent crime. We went from a record high in 20 to a much lower number, although it is unacceptable in any state, anywhere you want to look at it. So that number reflects a 62% decrease in homicides. We went from 16 deliberate to 6. 16 to 6. And again, the hard work, getting people identified and arrested early on in whatever situation it may be. Again, and I will reiterate that the great majority of our violent crime, to include homicides, are committed by people who know each other. There is a relationship, they're an acquaintance, it's a business deal, drug deal gone bad, a ripoff, whatever the case may be. We have very, very few random acts of violence, which is good. But still, these numbers are unacceptable, and we need to keep pushing on that. But it is much improved over 2020. Another category that we look at is our aggravated assaults, and understand that there are several things that fit in that category that count. I don't know if you can see all of that from there, but I will. Let me see here if I can get that. So that top one is assault with the weapon. So that would be anything from a club, a rock, all the way up to firearms, anything that can be used as a weapon. The second one is criminal endangerment, partner, family member, assault, strangulation. Remember, we've had these discussions. That's a standalone felony charge. There were 116 of those. 116 where somebody choked out their spouse for a felony charge. That adds to our aggravated. 104, assault on a minor. PFMA aggravated. So we have serious injury or assault, not a minor injury. So again, this is a felony as well. It's not a strangulation. And then we had physical assaults that were, didn't use any weapons. And then there was a total of a bunch of smaller ones. But you can see that, here we go again. We're seeing the prevalence of weapons, the propensity of people to use them, and the result is we have more serious injuries out the back end of that. And again, this is how we report them based on those categories. So the aggravated assault, the homicides, the robberies, and the sex assaults are the things that we look at in our violent crime. Again, this is one of our core strategic objectives, is to get these numbers down from where they were in past years. You can see the 10-year trend overall. And then on the bottom, you can see non-aggravated. So these would basically be your misdemeanor type assaults. We pretty much stayed status quo with 2020. The good thing with that is we didn't go up. The bad thing is we didn't go down. But if we can turn that number down in 2022 with our policing efforts and our strategic objectives, courtesy of safety levy resources, then that's what I'll be looking forward to. And the same thing on the misdemeanor side. I mean, this will be your fist fight, your bar fight, you know, those type of things. If we can get those things turned down as well, all going to be a benefit. This pretty much reflects the non-aggravated. You can see the great majority of our non-aggravated or misdemeanor assaults, if you will, are PFMA. These are taking place in the confines of one's house, usually. Tough for us to prevent that unless we happen to be standing there. But this really shows, you know, the problem that we're having for a myriad of reasons, whether it is alcohol, substance abuse, financial pressures, you know, all of those type of things that will cause problems in the home, which elevate to some sort of an assault. And you know, we recognize this. We have added another domestic violence investigator to our detective division, and we're supporting some initiatives that the city attorney has working with these on the victim side of things. And these are the ones that are just going to our court, not the felony ones. These are misdemeanors. So you can see that it is a significant issue that we're dealing with. Significant issue. The others in there, the simple assault would be the next one. So that's, you know, somebody getting in a fist fight, punching somebody, but, you know, the usual stuff. And then on down from there. Had 153 resisting arrest complaints. And this is concerning to me because, again, we're still seeing defiance. We're still seeing people that refuse to obey lawful orders of law enforcement. They fight. They know that they're not going to jail most of the time. And so they're very emboldened with stuff. And you know, that when you end up in resisting arrest, all those type of things, that indicates we had to use force. And that is not what we're about. And I don't know what, another department coined it. It's, their term is comply now, complain later. I mean, that just encapsulates all. Do what we tell you. If we committed a foul, we did something wrong, file a complaint, file a lawsuit, whatever, but don't disobey a lawful order from a police officer, because it's not going to end well. And we continue to have people that resist for all of those dynamics. Sex assaults and sex offenses, again, serious issue. A lot of these things, what we saw specifically from our detective division was a 44% increase of referrals from DPHHS. So essentially what's happening is that Health and Human Services, through their caseworkers, through whatever, you know, children all the way up are either witnessing or getting reports of some sort of sexual abuse, and they're directly referring it to our detective division. And for, for investigation, although they're running a parallel. But last year, there was a 44% increase in that. Now, whether they had a change in reporting requirements or whether that was just that much more activity, I can't say right now. But nonetheless, those all came over to us and we investigated them. Some people got charged, some not. But you can see that that's a significant. That top one there, that is intercourse without consent. That's intercourse without consent, and that that goes all age groups. The non, I guess the lesser serious would be the other sex offenses. And again, sex assault is the lead there, and that generally is the inappropriate touching or things like that, but not necessarily as defined in MCA and intercourse without consent. So you can see and this generally lands on our detective division. If a patrolman goes out and catches one of these, I mean, it's basic information, take the report, get what you need, make sure the victim's safe, secure what you need, and then the detectives get it. And so significant follow-up and a lot of work to do there, and they've done a great job with that. But you can see, I've been really kind of static until 21, and then we jump up. And again, that's that Health and Human Services referral that popped up for us there. And again, I don't know exactly what prompted that. But again, for us, if we don't know it happened, then we can't help people. So yeah, it generated extra work, but if we have an opportunity to help some people here, that's a good thing. Here we talk about our weapons offenses again. We know that they significantly increased. The number one, that big blue, the blue section there, are basically discharging a weapon in the city limits. And again, what we found during our research of this, that there were 233 reports of weapons being discharged in 21. There was only 114 last year. And the officers were only able to provide proof of discharge in 121 incidents, and then that was compared to 31. So we have reports that people are hearing gunshots, and not always are we finding that took place. However, we do occasionally find brass, find a hole in the wall, or whatever the case may be. In 2021, 43 reports of shootings and 26 reports of people displaying guns. So, the prevalence of weapons, the people to use them, coupled with our aggravated assault stuff, is problematic. And it goes into our violent crime strategy. So we need to stay on top of that. You can see by far from the, I'm on the wrong one, sorry about that. Always one ahead. There you go. Wonder why you guys are all looking at me like that. So there's your weapons offenses. You can see where we jump out. And the majority of the calls that we have, that bottom graph, indicates that, again, these are reports of gunshots. Not all of them are realized. When we get there, we don't find anything. But people are calling. People are calling. Try this again here. On our drug offenses, we did see a decrease. And again, this is primarily our patrol division. We have a drug unit, which a lot of the stuff that they do goes federally. That's our HIDA unit. So you see a lot of things end up in federal court. But again, we have a steady decline, which is good. We're not seeing quite so much activity. Obviously, the legalization of marijuana, both recreational and medical, has really had us back off on things so we don't get sideways on some of that. But we still have 1,000-something incidents that we're dealing with. And of course, now we're dealing with the introduction of fentanyl. Methamphetamine is still the number one threat fentanyl coming up in a close second. And it's causing some overdoses. Our officers last year, I want to say we had a half a dozen, if not more, Narcan saves. And that's good stuff, other than the fact that we had to use Narcan. So our drug dealers don't care, and you've seen the stories, what's out there. That decline, it represents 11%. 11% drug incidents over 2020. I'd like to see that keep going down. I'd also like that to correlate with fewer victims, fewer arrests, those type of things. Let me get where I need to be here. So our theft offenses, basically misdemeanors. Let's go back. Here's our burglaries. The great majority there, 383 were to residences. So we still have this property crime problem of people breaking into houses. And again, remember, things are different. They're not taking your TV and your stereo and all that. They're looking for prescription drugs, money, things that they can get rid of to support 99% of the time a drug habit. And so some of these, of course, are forced entry. Some people find open windows. But we have very brazen criminals. Broad daylight, caught on camera, confronting residents when residents are in the house. And again, it adds some issues when we have a jammed up criminal justice system. The non-residents, which would be a business, and then the aggravated burglary, we had 21 of those. Generally, that's someone's home, and they break in and they assault that person that's in the house. That's an aggravated burglary. So we had 21 of those, and that's not good. I mean, that's you have some potential for some serious ramifications. And again, I would venture to say the great majority of those, they know each other. There's some sort of rip-off or whatnot without looking into it. You can see our 10-year trend, still high numbers, but a 3% decrease. And then when we look down and we talked about our stolen vehicle problem and unauthorized use, we still are struggling with that. People are taking them left and right. They're driving them to the next crime scene. We have, we make plenty of arrests. I indicated that we've recovered 98% of those things, but we need to do better. We need to do better, and we need help, again, from the criminal justice system. Our officers are frustrated that they arrest people, and either A, they can't get them in jail, or B, if they get them in jail, they're out again. And there's just, that accountability is lacking. And so if all of a sudden we had unlimited jail space, I'll guarantee you that number goes down. And so it goes to the emboldened. They know we can't do much. And so we struggle with that, but we keep working that problem. So our property crimes, these would be your misdemeanor stuff. You can see all categories there. The number one in the blue is just all theft, so things that you have laying around, or bicycle, things of that sort. Shoplifting's a big one, and this is problematic mainly because of some of the limitations put on us by the legislature back in 2019, as far as pushing down the threshold. Problematic, getting people in jail. Again, I think some of you saw a presentation we did. There was a Connex box full, $100,000 worth of tools that people were just walking into Lowe's and taking. Staff generally doesn't confront them. If we do, what do we do? So again, this is compounded and exacerbated by the criminal justice system problems that we have that I know you're all aware about. Nonetheless, not going to stop us from enforcing all these. And you can see that there's a fair amount of work to do in those areas. But by far, just theft and shoplifting, pretty much the biggest things that we see. Again, difficulty with the criminal justice system, primarily, not for lack of enforcement, but we increased on the theft 30%. 30%. So again, something that we can target and that we can work on. All right, moving into some traffic enforcement. DUIs, still problems. I don't know what people don't get about it, that there are ample opportunity to get a ride share, call somebody, public transportation, but we still have a significant people that choose to drink and drive. And you can see that we had 420 of them last year. That was drugs and alcohol, primarily marijuana and alcohol. 150 of those were aggravated DUI. So the orange is aggravated, which means that they've got a very, very high BA. So you're talking about a lot of times professional alcoholics that can function pretty well, but when they get stopped or get in a wreck, their blood alcohol is at a level that is very, very high. I forgot what that number is, Matt. You know what it is? You can look it up later. So, but that makes it a felony. That makes it a felony. So, and you can see, so that middle slide there tells you where the legal limit is 0.08, and our highest blood record for the year was 0.421. 421. For the average person, 0.4 is dead. So you have some people that are really acclimated and they're out operating and they can function. But that's up there. That's up there. So you can see throughout the year, we're in the threes is probably where the average is throughout the year for that. And then our DUI offenses went down just a little bit, which is good. That's about a 2% decrease there. Let me see here. So now we talk a little bit about what I mentioned when we were going over our incidents here. We need to do a little bit better job with our traffic enforcement across the board. That's everybody. We know that it's the number one concern. When I go to task force throughout the city, that's the number one complaint is traffic. The number one complaint. And if the citizens had their way, this city would be bristling with speed bumps. And so we're very cognizant of that, and we need to make sure that our efforts reflect that. So the top really reflects the type of citations, and we have several different type that essentially equal a ticket that you would owe money on, so about 50%. And the other in the blue would be warnings. And so I support issuing warnings in instances because our intention is not to raise money, it's to educate and correct behavior. And if we can do that with counseling, education, and a warning, then mission accomplished there. But on those people that don't get it, citations are definitely warranted. But what you can see in that middle slide there is that except for 2019, and then in 2020 started a downward slide, and here we are at 21, and we need to do a little bit better. Because the correlation to that is going to be on the accident side. On that bottom slide there, will tell you that the citizens that called with traffic complaints, that number stayed relatively stagnant, but our officer initiated, basically making traffic stops, went down. Now there's a myriad of reasons for it. I'd like to say, that we're busy, we're running from call to call, we got some stuff, and that happens, not all the time. So all I'm going to say is that we've asked everybody to, let's do better so we can offset what we have going on here in future slides. Worth mentioning is our traffic enforcement unit. These guys did 43% of all the citations and warnings in the department. Yes, that's their job. They generally are free from handling calls for service. I expect them to do this. So this is good work. Again, it's one of our strategic objectives. We have augmented that unit going forward. We put a supervisor over the top of it, and we expect to be able to focus and target problematic areas and drive all these numbers down. That's what the goal is here. But a great job by the traffic unit. Here's the correlation. Here's the correlation that I'm looking at, is that we see a little bit of decline in our traffic enforcement, and unfortunately we got accidents that go up. And so this is what we don't want to have happen. Our goal is to drive these things down, make sure we got people behaving themselves, doing all the stuff that you see. Billings drivers are not known for being, pretty obedient to things, and so we need to work on this. But you can see, just looking at that bottom slide there, that our accidents increased. And I'm going to throw out 2020, but if you go from 19 to 21, that's about a 4% increase in accidents. And yeah, we got more people, and yeah, we got some big streets and all of that stuff, but we still need to get the thing turned the other way. I don't know if you can see this here, but this would be essentially the top locations for our accidents, and these never change over the past few years. So your top three are going to be Shiloh and King, Shiloh and Central, Central and 24th, and if you don't want to get in a wreck, stay off of those intersections between 3 and 6 o'clock. That's when the most wrecks take place. And what I will tell you, specifically with the ones on Shiloh that have the roundabouts, this was identified, and I think Lieutenant Lennox said, hey, it's time to get back with Public Works and do another PSA on how to drive in a roundabout. We did one when they opened, but I don't know how many years ago that was. The one thing I will say about roundabouts is that they were designed to eliminate right angle and head-on wrecks. Mission accomplished, okay? We do not have right angle head-on wrecks. We have angle accidents, and then we got the odd person, maybe DUI, who runs into the middle of it or goes the wrong way because whatever. But in general, mission accomplished on that. However, we need to remind people the rules of the road, who has the right of way, all of that type of stuff, and that's going to be a partnership that we get going with Public Works as the summertime gets going. But at the end of the day, yeah, we got a bunch of wrecks there, but you don't have injuries, you don't have fatalities. That's good. That's good. But it doesn't mean you can go smoking into it at 60 miles an hour and just take whatever you want. There are rules and so on and so forth. I know somebody in the police department who's had really bad luck with roundabouts. Okay, let's see. So in general, just breaking down, these are the most frequent arrests, adult and juvenile. And the one thing that I want to point out to you is that, and I didn't highlight them on here, but you look at municipal court warrants, contempt warrants, criminal contempt, probation violation, violations and conditions of release, no contact order, and theft warrants, misdemeanor. That is 6185 out of 900 or 9,863. That's referenced up there. That is 62% of all the arrests we make are administrative paper warrant people that have been arrested before in the system. And why do we keep arresting them? Why do we keep dealing with these people? Because of the jam up that we have in the criminal justice system. struggling with public defenders, struggling with jail spaces, overburdened court calendars, the whole back end. But if you take those out of there, you take 6,100, they're not making a bunch of arrests. It's the repeat. And that's what gets the officers frustrated is, why am I dealing with you again? And there is a massive effort going on in the criminal justice community in Yellowstone County to remedy this. And kudos to everybody for the work that they're doing to get this thing done. You know, but this is an issue. People think, you know, well, why is the guy walking around and all this type of stuff? And there's 3,400 arrests right there that were municipal court warrants. So they were either somebody did something and we asked for a warrant, or it was a non-appearance. The guy didn't show up. And so what do? I give him another non-appearance and appearance, and he doesn't show up again. So it just compounds itself. So I mean, it's that's the way it is. These are the numbers that we're dealing with here. Juveniles, you know, nothing too earth-shattering, other than the fact our SROs deal with a lot of you know, kids having stuff, alcohol, tobacco, things that they're not supposed to have. For those of you that have the report, I'm sure you do, back at the office, I will just have you refer to pages 37 through 45. That highlights all of our specialized positions and their accomplishments and the things that they did. I won't take time here unless you want to talk about something specifically. Almost done here, guys. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention our volunteer program. These individuals work out of our Crime Prevention Center, and there's a wide variety of tasks that they do, anywhere from report taking to fingerprinting people. But the most active group that we have is what we call our volunteer patrol unit. They essentially handle the abandoned vehicle problem in Billings. This is a very, very, very low priority call for officers. But if these guys aren't out doing this place would look like a third world country. They tag and they tow these vehicles and they keep the city clean. Because people know that if they drag it out on the street, that eventually we're going to do something with it. So if you don't have any junk vehicles, and along with code enforcement, you know, junky boats and, you know, washing machines and stuff and all that, that's these guys. And they do a great job. It is a force multiplier. I am so appreciative for what they do, because if they weren't doing it, you know, this is something we need to talk about. Because do we want to spend resources? When I got 911 calls, do we want to be dealing with a car that's up on blocks? So those are things that we need to do. Fortunately, I don't have to have that discussion right now. So briefly, animal control falls under the umbrella of the police department. After the safety levy, they are now the smallest division in the city. Code enforcement used to be, but they got a couple FTEs. There's 7 of these individuals. 5 are actually relegated to enforcement. And so, big task, big city, lots of animals, and people like their animals. So they have their hands full. But they do a pretty good job staying on top of things. So again, I wanted to give them recognition. And the last thing I will, or a couple of last things that we move through here, is that an addendum to this report is our professional standards, IA if you will, and it talks about the complaints and how we handle them, what the dispositions are. Essentially, we're talking about officer accountability. We're talking about we review all use of force things. It really shows how we police ourselves and manage issues of discipline. Again, it's addendum to this. What I will just point out, you certainly read that on your own, but let's see here if I can find what I'm looking for here. Okay, up here is basically, this is a report that anybody fills out if they have to use some sort of force on anybody. It's reviewed by a myriad of supervisors all the way up to the assistant chief to make sure that we are doing it right, we're within policy, we're within law, and that our training is consistent to best practices. And what I share here is that unequivocally, that bottom one there is that our officers actively engage in de-escalation, verbal commands, hand techniques. Very rarely do they go to any impact weapons or tasers or whatnot. We had verbal and a taser 17 times. Now there's another 25, but 134 times we basically grabbed a guy and controlled him. Now you're going to see when you look at that there's an increase in reports. What we did is that we increased the standard of review. So we lowered the threshold on when we're going to look at it. And so just by doing that, increased the number. But at the end of the day, and what I want to report to you and the citizens on this thing here is that we're doing it right. We're absolutely doing it right. In 2021, you can see that we have this high number. Remember what I told you, we lowered the threshold on what it is we're looking at. Our conduct's proper, it's within law, it's within policy. We had a couple incidents, you can see we're not within policy, and we handled those, but those were 5 total with things. So at the end of the day, we're doing it right. And so again, that is the comprehensive, and it's actually pretty detailed look at what we're looking at, things that we can improve on. So I'm very, very happy we saw downward turns on some of the property crimes. We do need to do a little bit better in our traffic enforcement and try to get those accidents turned the other way, and then continue pressing on with that aggravated assault issue. It falls right into our strategic objectives. Remember what they are going back from safety levy. Number 1, address violent crime. Number 2, address the downtown problem, whether it's perception of or reality of safety issues. And number 3 is to address traffic. Those are the 3. That's what jumped out at here. We had some great success a year in, so we want to keep pushing that down in 2023. The 4th strategic objective really supports our mental health partners as we try to get basically mobile units or behavioral units to go out on the scene and deal with people that are having issues, as opposed to having to send 2 officers to spend an hour dealing with something. If we can make sure that the situation's safe, we want to hand them off to the professionals, and then off we go. That's the partnership we're in with our social partners and the fire departments taking the lead on that one. So with that, I guess I'll take questions unless I covered everything and there's absolutely nothing that's left for you guys to ask me.
So from what I've gathered, calls of service to the department have gone down, but violent crime rates seem to be going up. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, we're dealing with we're dealing with the methamphetamine. We're dealing with that drug issue. We have an increase. So overall, the calls went down, but we still see that focused problem with the aggravated assault. And so, yeah, I mean, generally we look at the drugs and we look at the weapons and then the relationship between the 2, between the 3 actually. So.
Does the department have any
ideas as to why the murder rate dropped so significantly?
Well, I'm going to knock on wood, keep going that way. You know, I think, we really targeted some bad people. We really targeted some bad people, and we work very closely with our state and federal partners. Project Safe Neighborhood is basically the umbrella that we operate under. It's driven by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it is designed to identify and arrest and prosecute the worst of the worst. And so there is a very, very focused group that identify the worst of the worst, and they actively target them. And they actively get them arrested, and they actively get them in the federal system. Why do we want them in the federal system? They go away. Federal system doesn't have the criminal justice complexities and problems that we do stateside. So when you start seeing things that show up in the federal court, a lot of that is that effort. And so that's made a huge difference. Because there's some bad people here, and it doesn't take us too long to figure out who they are. And then once that happens, they are targeted and get arrested very quickly. So I think that's part of it. And I truly, truly hope that 2020 was just an anomaly. Because if you take that out of the mix, you know, you're kind of, you're in the, you know, it's still unacceptable, but you're where we have been years past, give or take one or two, so.
I saw one of the slides highlighted the rejuvenation of the MAAP program.
Yep.
Can you go into detail on what spurred that, and also if there's any plans to bolster that program going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that motivated addiction alternative plan. I believe that's what it is, right, Matt? And so this is our effort to leverage people into treatment. Again, we know that we can't arrest our way out of that problem. So what we're trying to do is essentially carrot and a stick philosophy to say, look, I'm not going to issue a citation, or you may have to sit in jail for a while, unless you want to go get treatment. If you want to get treatment, we'll make that happen. And so there's been people that that's worked for. And there's been people that not. It's not uncommon for that, for somebody to fail several times before it actually takes. The problem that we have for a full implementation of that philosophy is the jail space. You're talking about open container, drinking, you know, those type of, versus a PFMA that needs to go to jail. And talking yesterday to the jail, or to the sheriff, 560 people are down there. I mean, they are overcrowded. And so you got to make decisions on who goes. And so that kind of hampered the program, although they say, yeah, there's room and so on and so forth, but that's hampered the program. What that has kind of transitioned to is the behavioral model, where we're sending people out on the street to meet with these individuals, and the professionals decide what treatment to go to. You need to go here, here, and here. We know jail's not the right place, and we know the ER is not the right place. But where is that? And for the police department and our program, I would like to a soft handoff, here you go, to a mental health addiction specialist, where they can provide the counseling, clean and sober housing, leads on employment, all of that type of stuff. That's not what we do. And so this is what we want. And again, it's all designed to be more efficient, more effective with the existing resources for law enforcement. We're not social workers, but we are pushed into that situation. So we are working very closely with our social partners, so we can give them that, and we can go about enforcing the law. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and how successful, I suppose, is that soft handoff model going, I suppose, at this point?
Well, once we get it up and running, 100, hitting on all cylinders, it's going to be great. It's working in Missoula right now, and we know there's different models out there, and it's close. It's close. There's some high-level stuff that's going on, At the end of the day, what our officers are looking for, I mean, I don't need to overthink this thing. We go, we absolutely cannot abdicate our responsibility for public safety. So we are going to respond to make sure person's safe, that the responding people are going to be safe. Okay, and if those qualifications are met, I'm just going to say, here, and pass them off and go. That would be absolutely ideal for us. So instead of spending an hour or more, 10 minutes. Because I got 80,000 calls that are coming in and we got to go. That would be ideal. If the person's a threat, can't be handled by civilians or whatnot, then obviously. Again, we cannot advocate our responsibility to provide safety. So we will go. Once it's safe, we're out of there. That's the idea. That's the idea.
So we reported that spike in fentanyl use in Billings, but that seems to contradict what we're seeing in regards to drug arrest. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that, well, not everybody is, I mean, when we get into the spike in the fentanyl, we're getting on the victim side. That's what we're seeing. And so what you're seeing in our statistics are mainly our patrol officers that are interacting with people on the street. But I would tell you to go look at the HIDTA, H-I-D-T-A. That's our High Intensity Drug Traffic Area Task Force. We are representative here in Billings. It's called Eastern Montana. And look at their fentanyl cases. And it's in that specialized position section. Matter of fact, okay, so here's Rocky Mountain HIDTA. Now understand, this is a federally funded task force. We have a supervisor that oversees it, co-located with other agencies, and the mission is to disrupt and dismantle drug traffic organizations. I'm not concerned about the guy on the corner smoking the joint. Not that we can do that anymore anyway, but that's not what their mission is. So here's what HIDTA did last year. They seized 144 pounds of methamphetamine, 3 pounds of cocaine, 45 pounds, 3 pounds of fentanyl, 31,000 fentanyl pills. So that's the outfit that is getting after the fentanyl. So again, drug traffic organizations. So we're not going after the user. I want the manufacturer, the distributor. That's what we're going after. And when you look at their numbers, they targeted 3 local drug trafficking organizations. They disrupted 1, targeted 7 multi-state, and they dismantled 7 multi-state. That's some good work for some Billings men and women that have disrupted or dismantled a drug traffic organization from an outside state sending stuff in here. That's where your fentanyl is getting addressed from. And then if you want to get into the big political thing, we know it's coming from China, we know it's going to Mexico, we know it's coming up from the south. But we can do what we can do, so. Can I ask you a question? Yeah.
You mentioned the backlog in the system and the frustrations officers have. Do you foresee any hope of relief on that front?
Yeah, some. Like I said, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, anybody who's anybody in the justice system in Yellowstone County is working on this problem and has been. They came up with some really good solutions that are looking to get put in place. And Paul, mainly what it's designed to do is to expedite getting people out of jail. And it requires the cooperation and coordination of the jail, of the public defender, of all of the judges, both district justice and municipal court, and the service providers. And then leveraging some technology and all that. And so you got a lot of moving parts that need to get on the same page. But if they pull this off, then what they're able to do is identify, number one, does this person need to be in jail? Number two, can they just, you know, be done quickly? Or number three, why is this person in jail so long? Let's get them out. And so if you can get, I think the estimate was just if it were just to go today, they could probably get 80 people out of the jail. 80. If they could expedite it and get the thing done, that's huge. To get 80 people out, to relieve the pressure on the jail. And then, of course, you know, out here on the street, if you build it, they will come. And, you know, we'll bring people and fill it up. It's going to be full no matter what we do. But moving people through the system is where we're jammed up right now. You got probation parole involved, you got Department of Corrections involved, you got all the other people. And we can get everybody going, focused, work out a few things. If you get 80 people out, that's going to be huge. That may or may not necessarily need to be in there. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Thank you all for coming, I appreciate it. Hope it was informational and educational. And yeah, go and read it. Read it, live it, learn it. We'll be around. Thank you, everybody.